Our first speaker. Okay. I'll be right back. Uh, Sorry for. Oh, Dr. Carrie Ann, is she? I see she's in the room. Ah, there she is. I think you can come off mute.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? Good evening. How are you?
Hi. Good. How is everybody doing?
Great, great. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We have people just rolling into the room here. We're up into the 50s. We had a lot of people interested in this evening's different discussions. Our first talk about trauma-informed design and discussions, as well as the Sportsman's Tennis Club. The great doings that are going on there. Nice, going to be looking forward to that, as well as Scott Hamway from the META talking about the electrification of the 28 bus. And the Daily Table, the new new grocery air store, some fresh foods, etc. Supposed to be at the new Mattapan project once that is done. But now it is about 6:32, and I wanted to start this off promptly since we have a pretty much very full agenda. I'd like to welcome first Dr. Carrie Ann Williams. She is a child psychologist from JRI. And one of the reasons that I wanted to, I asked her if she would speak tonight is that over the last couple of years, we've been living with the pandemic and all that it entails. We've taken note, and so has the general public, about trauma and the already existing trauma in our community piled on with the pandemic, the trauma coming out from that, but also how trauma informs our decisions and what the effect it has on us. One of the things that, I don't know how many of you are on Twitter, but yesterday I posted on Twitter, there's this house on Almont Street in Mattapan that has the most beautiful mural going down its chimney on the side. And if anyone has a chance to go see it, I encourage you. It's a birds, hibiscus, clouds. It's absolutely stunning. And I think it's the prettiest house in Boston. And to have something like that, it's in a single family home. And someone may not think that that's such a big deal, but to see something so beautiful in our community, it just absolutely dumbstruck me. And I thought, what if we had that same type of intentional design that was permanently emblazoned on something like the Mattapan Station project, which is very formal looking and very institutional looking. And what that would feel like for people to be surrounded by constant reminders of calm, something having a relationship directly to, that is adjacent to the Neponsit Greenway, which actually won the 2018 National Best Public Space for the Association of American Planning Association. So we're going to do the format tonight. Dr. Williams agreed to have more of a discussion format. It's not going to be a formal presentation where we have slides, et cetera. And I encourage others to join in. We're not going to have a free-for-all. We're not going to start something that we clearly, I am not going to ever go into. But we are going to start off with a discussion about what that means. And Dr. Williams, if you'd like to open up, be much appreciated. Thank you.
Sure. And so, yeah, if you guys have questions or any things that specifically that you want me to comment on, I'm happy to do so. I'll kind of just do a quick introduction of myself. So I'm Carrie Ann Williams. I'm a psychiatrist working with the Justice Resource Institute. I'm one of the medical directors there. And I moved to Massachusetts in 2012. I'll give you just a quick background. I am actually originally from Jamaica. I left Jamaica when I was 17, I moved to the US. I was living in Texas for 4 years. I went to college at Baylor, which is in Waco, Texas. And then I applied for medical school in Nebraska, got in there. So I lived in Omaha, Nebraska for about 7 years. I went to 4 years of medical school there and 3 years of my adult psychiatry residency. And then while I was in Nebraska, I decided I was going to try to apply to Brown. And I said, well, if I don't get into Brown, I'll just stay here. And I got into Brown. And so I went to Rhode Island for 2 years of my fellowship in child psychiatry. And when I finished there, I said I wanted to live closer to Cambridge, Boston, Cambridge. So I applied for a job with Cambridge Health Alliance, which is one of the Harvard teaching hospitals. And got that job. So I've been on faculty with Harvard Medical School since that time, since 2012. And it's been a really interesting time. I finally did leave Cambridge Health Alliance in 2019, and then kind of worked full-time for JRI as their medical director. But throughout, from 2012 until now, I've kind of been honing this specialty in working with youth and families that have experienced trauma. My first job out of training was working at the kind of therapeutic residential school, primarily with youth and families that were involved with the Department of Children and Families, and that had complex histories leading them to need more robust therapeutic services. And so some of the youth were in state custody, some had shared custody, some had no DCF involvement, but all of them had complex histories. Most of them had some trauma of some kind.
Without video.
And so throughout that time, I've kind of learned a lot about how trauma works. And so that's been something that I've kind of studied. And then right before the pandemic kind of struck in March 2020, I started a podcast called Black Mental Health Matters. And it was on 98.1, The Urban Heat. And I had my show on there for a long time. And then just last summer, I just switched over to just having it being a podcast and not just a radio show, just being a podcast. And so it's available as a podcast now, Black Mental Health Matters with Dr. Carrie Ann. And on that podcast, I talk about specifically mental health issues that affect the Black community, but also just general topics too, just generally, information. And also just using that as a space to elevate providers of color, specifically Black psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, advocates, and other services that serve the Black community and help to boost mental health. So that's kind of my background, and why I talk about trauma and why it matters in our communities. And also, just so you know me, that I'm not originally from the US. And right now, I don't live in Boston anymore. I live closer to Worcester. So I'm not as familiar with some of the areas that maybe you may discuss. I'm familiar with Mattapan a little bit because I used to go to Jubilee Church for many years. But then I decided to go to a church closer to where I live. So I used to be in Mattapan often. I've been to Ali's Roti, which I really loved. And then the radio station was also located probably, where was it? It was close by for a while. So I've kind of been in the area, but I still don't know it very well. So I spoke with Fatima, and she had mentioned that there was, issues related to like zoning and other kinds of like changes in the area. And so I wanted to kind of, I guess, to start out by finding out from you guys what would be helpful for me to talk about. What questions might you have?
I can start the discussion and people can jump in. One of the things that I know I have noticed, especially over during the last 2 years, is the reaction that people have when you come into discussions and you're talking about changes in an area. The feeling that you get when you're walking along certain streets, like I was absolutely surprised at my reaction to seeing, a mural painted on the side of a chimney on an otherwise, identical house to some others on the same street. But the effect that when you intentionally go and create a space that feels human and that feels, enlivened, versus when so often in our community, when people are making changes, they're doing it from a very practical, I guess is the best way to say it. Oftentimes it seems that way, not necessarily that it's informed from an everyday, it's not coming from our community. Whereas this mural, it clearly represented people who were in our community. It was bright, it was lively. There were things that were grown that were familiar to us, those of us who come from countries that are, whether in the Caribbean or otherwise. But that kind of thing, the feeling that people feel jolted oftentimes, sometimes when people say, well, why do people drive that way down certain streets? I'll say, well, they have good reason. Oftentimes it's just a gut reaction. They want to get out of there. That's the way that's what they're doing. But if you could speak to why sometimes people react to the space that they're in, because I know with children, it is intentional, the way that schools are designed and how kids feel when they're learning. Automatically when you walk into a school in Newton, say, for example, that's maybe beautifully designed versus one that it was built in the early 1900s and haven't has much love of late, I should say. That's where I think that be a good starting point.
Yeah, when I think about neighborhoods and homes, I think about the sense of belonging somewhere. And I feel like that's something that is kind of a fundamental human thing, but it's also important, particularly when an individual or community has gone through things that are traumatic, because there are so many communities like our community that they're kind of othered. And, having a space where you feel like this is where you belong, that does a lot for mental health, but also it helps to restore something that trauma takes away from us. Trauma makes us feel as though we don't belong. It makes us feel as if there's something that makes us so different from others, that but different in a bad way. And so having things that remind you that this is a good space, a safe space, a positive space, a happy space, that does a lot to help to negate the effects of trauma. But also the other aspect that you mentioned is that if it's done by, this mural or by other things are done by people within the community, then it's something that kind of belongs to the community. It comes from the community and it's for the community, versus someone coming in from the outside, which, it could be nice if they're doing something for the community, but it's a special feeling when it's coming from the community. It just kind of helps to highlight this feeling of belonging, and it helps people to feel safer. So I think those are kind of some of the positive aspects of things. I think from maybe the negative aspect, when things are changed, people can sometimes feel very anxious. It feels like they feel a loss of control, that how come this got changed and no one mentioned that it was going to be changed? We didn't have a voice in this. So there's kind of this feeling of a loss of control of, are other things going to happen that we have no control over? Is this going to be is this a beginning of something? Is this going to be a threat in some way? And so that sense of kind of like routine and predictability and control is something that can also help people to feel safe. And when changes happen, that kind of take away from that feeling of safety. So change can be, good or bad, depending on how people are informed about it happening, who's doing it, and what the change is. And that does tap into our threat detection parts of our brain, because change can make us feel a little bit unsteady.
Thank you. Not sure where to hear, but I'll do what I see on I'll follow my camera. Jennifer Brock, and then Cynthia Francis.
Yes. Hey, Dr. Williams. Hello, fellow Jamaican. How are you? How are you? How are you? How are you? CHA alum as well. I'm putting on my camera so you can see. But I agree with what Fatima is saying, is when Chase Bank came to Mattapan Square, and Fatima, you know how we felt about Bank of America moving or being moved out of Mattapan Square. And then when Chase took over, that big mural that was in the back, that was Marcus Garvey and I think a Haitian leader, I believe. And when they came, they painted over it. I was mortified. I was like appalled. How could you change this? Oh my goodness, why are you getting rid of this? This is in our neighborhood and we should have a say so. And I remember how I felt about it. And then they put up a very similar mural on it. And I remember how I felt. And Dr. Williams, I'm a nurse. And so I get what the change is all about. And I deal with patients every day. And we, including myself, when there's change, they're outside the norm. I'm writing notes. And as I'm writing the notes, you're saying what I'm writing. And it's like, oh my gosh, yes, there's no control. You feel that you're, what's the word I want to say? That you're just, you have no say so, you have no voice, you have no control, you have nothing. So how are you going to live your life if what you're so used to, so walked into, is no longer there? So I'm glad the mural's there, and I have to drive down that street, Fatima, to see that mural on the chimney, because that person wants to make their neighborhood seem nice and bright and not dark and gloomy, as we can sometimes drive down streets or be in neighborhoods and it's dark and gloomy and frightening. So and
I think about, like, when you think about what the emotions are that are evoked when you see the mural. So basically, what is the content of it? Because the emotions that it evokes, it might have some meaning. So if it is something that brings comfort, or something that kind of brings some sense of importance too. Kind of maybe it elevates people that are important to your community or to your culture, you know, that sort of thing, then that has this meaning. So when someone comes and like paints over it, it's kind of like, this is the meaning, is that, wait a second, it just feels like a repeat of it's like a metaphor for what's been happening in other aspects of society. It's just like, oh, this is paint over something that's so important to our community.
And maybe with me, it might have been because it was Marcus Garvey. You know who Marcus Garvey is. I'm sure everybody else knows who Marcus Garvey was. So when it was gone, it was like, that's part of my culture. How dare you? But yeah. I want to say, I think they put back Marcus Garvey and a few other people back there, if I'm not mistaken. So you're absolutely right when you say it's culturally, it depends on where it hits you. So it did hit me culturally. I'm not going to tell a lie. I was annoyed. So, but anyway, but thank you for coming on.
It kind of triggers this sense of like, you know, when somebody kind of like gets you, they understand that this is something that's important. But I think it also triggers the same emotions that are involved with like bonding and attachment, this kind of that warm feeling of belonging again. So I think that's, if it, you know, when that's disrupted, it can also kind of trigger this feeling of anxiety and upset and anger even, which can be related to feeling like some part of you is being threatened. Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer. Cynthia?
Hi, good evening. Thank you. Welcome, and I appreciate your time and your expertise. First, I want to just get your podcast. I don't know if you can put it in the chat.
I'll have to, I think afterwards, what I'll have to do is go to the website and then copy and paste
Link
it
in. Okay. I have a question about how do we help people move through trauma? As a community organizer, I started this because I had to heal from the trauma of the police harassing our children and what they did to the community. And then I got to the point where I would even call them if it was for 911, because that's how done I was with the police. Yeah. And so I had to decide how I was going to deal with that trauma. So working with Russell Holman State Rep and having an opportunity to represent my community gave me some type of healing, because not only am I working through it, but my community is working through what we've been through. The gunshots, just hearing gunshots and always jumping to see, is this firecracker, is this real? Or jumping, or having jumping to the floor. I mean, I used to just fall out of the bed onto the floor. Like, just different traumas happen. And then there's reasons why people don't participate in the community groups or advocate for themselves for past traumas of trust that given to authorities or given to people in leadership, but didn't follow through. So what I would like for you to speak to is, how do we, and I know that we go through a certain grievance, we grieve and get in that cycle of grieving and not be able to move forward. And so, and then other things happen, it adds that trauma on top of what we've already been traumatized in different things. And you have so many layers. So I just want to know some strategies, how we can help our community residents move through trauma, through some practices or some strategies, so that they can accept change and they can move forward, and it's not ripping off a bandage when something else happens again.
No, that's a fair question. I think for me, when it comes to addressing trauma, the primary thing is a feeling of safety. So I always think about creating safe spaces where people feel like they can actually be authentic. Because I think once you're not being authentic, you're not really healing. You're kind of, you're kind of just putting on a kind of a mask, a defense. So creating spaces where people can feel authentic and feel safe. And so that might be kind of smaller groups or people kind of get together. But that's kind of the first step, is places where people can feel safe and feel authentic, to kind of to be real about what they're thinking and feeling. And then the second thing is, out of that is, trauma has a way of isolating us. It tells us that no one understands what we're feeling. No one else gets it. We're the only ones. It has a way of, you mentioned people kind of sometimes not even wanting to get involved. It's kind of this feeling, this disconnect. it's a self-protection mechanism of trauma. And so the antidote for that is connection. So being able to kind of reach out to people, meet them where they're at, and find ways to connect. That's one thing I think about. And there's so many various ways to do that depending on, the situation. For trauma itself, I would say that, so you mentioned grieving, and I think that's a big part of it. Part of grieving is kind of coming to terms with what's happened, kind of being able to formulate some kind of meaning out of what's happened. And people form different meanings out of things. But for us, when we do trauma work, that's one of the penultimate things that we get to is, what does this experience you had in your life, what does it mean for you? And can you still move forward even though this thing has happened? So you're not negating that it's happening, you're not denying that it happened, but you can, so for some people, their meaning is, well, despite that this thing happened, I can still move on. Some people come to the meaning that, this thing that happened made me stronger. People have different meanings that they have, but forming some meaning out of it, I think is really important. And with the grief process, it's about figuring out what is your process for, like, what do you need to let go of? People, again, come to a different conclusion about what things they need to hold on to and what things they need to let go of. The process of letting go is very, very difficult and can be very painful. And that's, I think, a key thing. But again, that happens in a safe space, like this process of letting go. And then the other thing I'll mention is this idea of trust, because trust and mistrust is also related to holding on to certain things that have happened and kind of expecting them to happen again. And that's probably one of the more difficult things to navigate, because it's so difficult to know who to trust. And even thinking about it from a citywide kind of perspective of, like, people coming into your city and making these changes or proposing plans, how do you know who to trust? That's so difficult. But I think coming along with that, I'll just say, is self-compassion for when you get things wrong, because there's going to be times where you trust the wrong person and they still kind of hurt you. So self-compassion for when you make the wrong choice, but then also being able to be bold enough to still kind of move forward and trust, but then also having good advisors and trusting those advisors. So having advisors that you trust. So that's why I kind of, I think groups like this are so important. Because again, when you're isolating and trying to make decisions on your own, it's so difficult to know these things. But when you're together as a group, it becomes, you can kind of make these decisions as a team, and it helps to deal with this idea of trusting versus not trusting, because now you can kind of talk about it together. So those are some of the things that come to mind as things you can do both individually and as part of a group. So if that's helpful. And then, consultation with people who are specialists, along the way. But knowing that all those things that I mentioned, they all take time. It's much easier said than done.
Thank you. And if, you can leave some, along with your podcast, some resources, like connections, if someone wanted to connect with you.
I can leave out my contact information.
Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Thank you. We have one more question. Pam, I'm not sure, let me know how I'm doing on time. From Rep. Russell Holmes, can you please speak to the role of open space and green space in the mental health of children in particular?
Oh, yes. So I guess I'll take it from this angle, which is the importance of play. So for children, they are still learning about the world and they're still exploring the world. And it's actually crucial to their brain development for them to be able to explore and play, and for them to feel like there's space for them to move around and run around. When there's not very many green spaces, there's not a lot of spaces for them to play freely. There's not a lot of places for them to be safe. We want them to kind of have space to kind of move around. So I connect it back to play, because play is absolutely crucial for development. Play is how children learn and how they explore. It helps them to make connections between things, and it helps them to be able to kind of try things out and make mistakes in a they can make mistakes in a low stakes scenario. So they can kind of try things and fail and get up and run again. And they can learn about resilience. So green spaces are absolutely essential for that reason. And as I said, I feel like it creates like not just a space for them to play, but a safe space for them to play and for them to learn. Along with green, so green spaces could include playgrounds, but it can also include community gardens. And I have a little bit of a bias towards gardening. I feel like that's absolutely helpful for kids too, is to learn about nature, learn about how things grow, learn about how, I guess, even what you might call delayed gratification. You know, you plant something and you have to wait for it to kind of come to fruition. So there's just so many things about the world that kids can learn through green spaces. And even animals, green spaces, you can have dog parks, children get to learn how to interact with animals. There's just, I feel like there's just so many benefits to having green spaces for kids for a lot of reasons.
We'll just do one more question. We have a couple of minutes. There was a question about the traumatic effects of gentrification on communities of color. If that has ever come up in some of your podcasts at all?
It has not come up, but it's something that I've been thinking a lot about because, you know, the thing about gentrification is that it's kind of like this kind of two-sided thing where, you know, this debate about, well, on one hand, we're trying to enhance the community, but on the other hand, it then drives up property values and ends up changing the community in a lot of negative ways as well. And I think when I think about it, I think it kind of triggers this sense of, I don't know, people, again, the idea that people are kind of losing spaces that they've, that belong to them. So they're losing their homes. This is kind of sometimes homes that they've had for like generations. Their memories are there. So there's a lot of, again, a lot of attachment, emotionally psychological attachment to these spaces. I think sometimes we undervalue how much it means to have a home. And so when people are kind of driven out of their spaces, that is a traumatic event. It's a traumatic event to be pushed out of your home or to be pushed out of your neighborhood, or suddenly you can't afford to live there anymore, or suddenly everything looks unfamiliar to you. I think people undervalue that in itself can actually be a traumatic event for a person or for a family. And then, you know, that could lead to all the kind of effects of trauma, which could include mistrust, hypervigilance, being very kind of triggered to all kinds of emotional responses, anger, depression, you know, these sorts of things. So I think it can actually, depending on what side of gentrification you're on, you know, it can really be a traumatic event.
Thank you. And this has to absolutely be the last question. From David Lopes, can you speak to the dynamic of the angry Black man or woman who push back aggressively against those from other communities who disrespect us in political or social constructs, and is being angry a healthy emotional outlet? Good question.
So, you know, I think that when I think about anger, I always kind of think, okay, what is the root cause of it? Where is it coming from? And anger can be a trauma response as well. I guess I'll say, as a trauma response, it is, you know, trauma, the fight, flight, flee kind of thing. It's part of the fight response. And a lot of times it isn't recognized as such. We kind of think, well, why is this person so angry? And we may not realize it's actually the kind of a fight response for trauma. It's a survival response. So sometimes it is, comes across that way. It's somebody who is feeling a threat of some kind, and then they're responding with anger. So as a psychiatrist, I always like to go back to what's the threat? And if it's a real threat, or if it's a perceived threat, why is it perceived as a threat? What about it is threatening? Why is it kind of being perceived that way? So kind of going deeper into what is the anger really about? So in this situation, you said that this person may be angry about people from kind of other, can you say that again? They're angry about people from other groups?
Those pushing back aggressively against those from other communities who disrespect us in political or social constructs, and is being angry, helpful most. So from the outside, to your, I think your earlier point, it's someone from the outside, not within our own community, having discussions. It's almost like well, actually David can tell himself. David, if you want to unmute, I don't want to speak for you.
Mm.
Yeah, what I'm talking about is, from communities of color, many times we're being pushed or approached from different sides where things are happening to our community, or we see certain things happen that we could never get away with, but someone else is coming in and getting away with. So my position has always been, I'm not going to tolerate your disrespect. I'm not going to be the nice person and say, well, gee, why did you do this? I'm going to say, you deliberately disrespected me or disrespected my community by doing what you did. So I'm going to come right back at you in a very aggressive way to show you what happens when you disrespect people. So sometimes when you do that, you're branded this angry person, but to me, it's being done in a very conscious manner to say, back off. And I think to me, that's like the dynamic between a Malcolm X or a Martin Luther King.
I do think that anger it can be an appropriate response depending on the situation. I always think about how we communicate the anger, like what do we do with our anger? Because anger can be a very powerful driving force for change. But I think it's always important to kind of to think about, okay, how can we express our anger in a way that's really productive and that actually leads to the change that we want to have. And so what I guess that's how I kind of think about anger, is that it's not that it's not appropriate, but it's about how it's expressed and whether it's achieving the intended end. So after kind of trying that approach, if it works, then you can say, okay, this was a successful way to do this. If it's not working, how can we change the approach to make it more successful next time? But not necessarily that we shouldn't be angry about things when they're unfair or they're kind of when there's disparities, where we know that we're definitely not receiving fair treatment. It's definitely appropriate to be angry, but kind of to channel that in a way that is going to get us the intended end, I think.
Right. So anger should come with some action.
Yeah. For sure. And learning from kind of the effects of it. So if anything is not working out, like, okay, what do we need to do differently next time to be effective?
And can I ask one other quick question?
Yeah.
Is there, in your mind, is there a difference between what I would call righteous indignation or anger and just rage?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. I think part of it is, sometimes I think about it in terms of the degrees of control we have over it. Because sometimes when I think about rage, I feel like there's a loss of control. Like sometimes you get to this threshold where you don't even know what you're angry about anymore. Like the anger has just completely overwhelmed your brain to the point where, it's not productive. But righteous indignation, I feel like it tends to lead to change. There tends to be that the person still retains a lot of the kind of rational thinking that kind of led them to that emotion. And they're still able to enter into some kind of discussion about it. The anger hasn't overwhelmed their ability to really think through it. So that's how I kind of see those two things differently.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Williams. We're going to have to wrap up because we do need to go on to the next. But it was mentioned in the chat also that there is a beautiful mural on the side of the Sportsman's Tennis Club with Arthur Ashe and Venus Williams on the side. So that nicely dovetails into our next speakers. But this has been very informative, and I would love to continue having another discussion, maybe not necessarily in a general monthly meeting, but we do have some other monthly meetings where I think it would be wonderful for you to participate if you would be available. So,
and I will, I'll look up my podcast link and put it in the chat.
Well, thank you so much. Next, we're going to start Tony Wiley, from the Executive Director from the Sportsman's Tennis Club. Tony, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Thank you. I'm also going to share my screen. Hopefully that's come through. Everyone can see that okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Fatima, for the invitation to be here, and thank you everyone for coming out tonight to share. Hopefully, many of you are familiar with Sportsman's Tennis in the Richmond Center. We are actually in Dorchester, but we are very close to the Mattapan line. We're at 950 Blue Hill Avenue, and we have been in that location since the early 1970s. We've been in existence actually for 60 years, having just celebrated our 60th anniversary. Sportsman's is an organization that, as is in our name, we do have a large focus on tennis, but in reality, as many of you know, we also have education programs and life skills programs, both for youth and adults. And although our mission is very youth-centered, we have a very large adult tennis program as well. We are a nonprofit tennis organization. I know I'm moving quickly, but I want to make sure I stay within our time constraints here. We're a nonprofit organization, and the mission-driven programs that we run throughout the year provide free and low-cost tennis, academic, and life skills programs to more than 5,000 youth annually. Now, that was a pre-pandemic number. It's probably more like 2,500 right now, but we're hopeful that fairly soon we'll be back to our full strength. So my name is Tony Wiley. I'm the CEO of Sportsman's. I've been there for a little over 13 years. I was born in Boston and raised in Dorchester and now live in Mattapan. And I am thrilled to be the CEO of Sportsman's. Tonight, we're also going to be joined by the architect, Peter Roth, who is on a pro bono basis, providing significant guidance and direction to us as we look to expand the Sportsman's facility within our existing footprint. So I want to be very careful to say that we are not getting larger within Harambe Park, but within the space that we already have, we are looking to make different use of the courts and the facilities in general. And then we'll be joined by Isaac Baker, who's going to share with us a conversation about our plans for solar energy at that facility and what that will mean for the broader community at large. So I'm going to go through this relatively quickly so that hopefully if you have questions, we can answer them at the end. Sportsman's, again, is not your typical tennis club. I think many people have in their mind an image of what a tennis club is, and oftentimes it's kind of a country club type of image. Sportsman's, again, we are right on Blue Hill Avenue in the heart of the city. And our goal has always been to leverage tennis to provide life opportunities for youth and families along the Blue Hill corridor. Sportsman's was actually the first indoor nonprofit tennis club in the United States that was originally built by and for the Black community by 8 friends who love to play tennis, originally at Carter Playground. And today we serve people from all walks of life from throughout the greater Boston area, but our mission-driven programs, the academic and social emotional wellness programs, health and wellness programs are really geared towards the Blue Hill corridor. In addition to the academic programs, we have some very creative programs that we've created, which really are designed to address many of the problems we were talking about a few minutes ago, such as how do we improve relationships between kids and police in a bilateral manner. So we created a program 12 years ago called Volley Against Violence that brings police and kids together on the court with other tennis players here at Sportsman's and with volunteers and coaches. And it builds a life skills curriculum into the tennis program, and it helps kids understand how it is that they're to interact with the police and what the police role is in the community. And it helps the police understand that kids are kids. We had a police officer who had been a long time volunteer in the program who said, you know, for the most part, police see kids as either the victims or perpetrators of a crime. And a program like this helps us remember that they're kids first, and then we can figure out what else happened and what else is going on. So this program, as I said, has been going on for 12 years. It's a free program that goes on Friday nights. It's a little different now with the pandemic. We used to have about 125 kids on the court every Friday night, and there would be about a dozen police officers. And if you came to the club, there'd be police cars and police vans in the parking lot. We've had to cut the numbers down because of COVID, and we do it now on more of a registered basis instead of drop-in. But we're certainly hopeful that we'll get back to full strength on this program fairly soon as our numbers begin to increase. Our classroom enrichment programs are in a program called School to Sportsman's. Kids come to Sportsman's, they register for this program. It's not a drop-in program. It's after school every day, Monday through Friday from roughly 2 to 6 p.m. whenever they get out of school. Pre-pandemic, we had about 75 kids in the program. Now we're looking at more like 45 because of distancing issues. We focus on grades K through 5 and the schools that are in the area closest to us, because for the most part, kids change their drop off and the bus drops them off. And we focus on math and literacy and some science as well. And everything that we do, of course, is coupled with tennis. We also have a summer learning project that happens during the summertime. In addition to our summer camp, we have a traditional summer camp that will usually have about 200 kids in it. And at the same time that they're there, there'd be about 45 kids that would be enrolled in the equivalent of a summer school program that offers them 125 hours of math, literacy, and experiential learning over the course of 5 weeks of summer. Summer learning project is free. The summer camp is a full day, 5-day-a-week summer camp program, which is typically the least expensive program in the area. And we do make scholarships available. We accept vouchers from Child Care Choices. Our goal, as we said, is to be available to the community as a whole. In the classroom, what we see is that roughly 73% of Sportsman's third graders are at grade level at the time that they leave our program or midway through our program versus about 33% at local schools. 90% of the kids that are in our programming improve their language skills and their grades throughout the course of the time. And 100% of the kids that have been in our program have graduated from high school on time. So the Learning Center, again, it's a mission-driven program. 94% of the kids that are in the Learning Center are people of color. 83% speak more than one language at home. 100% are qualify for free and reduced price lunches or are otherwise low income. And 67% are from Dorchester, Roxbury, and Mattapan. Now, I want to be clear that when I say that I'm talking about the Learning Center at Sportsman's, there are pure tennis programs where people come in for strictly tennis. Some of those kids are certainly from the greater community as well as the Dorchester, Mattapan, Roxbury area. So right now, what I'm referring to here is the Learning Center, which is the combination of academic, social, and wellness programs and the tennis. So again, I mentioned the Volley Against Violence program, which is a partnership with the Boston Police. We also have a very deep partnership with the Brigham and Women's Hospital. We launched a program called the Brigham and Women's Center for Community Wellness at Sportsman's. And through that program, we offer free health and wellness programs for neighborhood adults and families. They are taught by clinicians from Brigham and Women's Hospital. And these are conversations very similar to the one that we just had, where we have a specific topic. It might be obesity, it might be diabetes or hypertension, and a physician will come along and will just break down for us the bare bones. What do you need to know that you probably are not going to get in a 15-minute visit from your doctor about this particular disease and how you manage it? And then the floor is open to questions. And we talk about what we refer to as the social determinants or the social contributors to that particular disease. So how does it affect your disease when you manage to get a few more steps into your day or when you change your diet? And then we want to make sure we provide you with a way to actually get the exercise that you need, for example. So we have a fitness center on site. We have cooking demonstrations on site. So these are just some of the examples of the programs that we have. You see there's information that we do have free gender-specific leadership programs for kids that happen on the weekend as well. These focus on things like public speaking and community service. Everything that we do, of course, is coupled with tennis. So these are the types of programs that we run. And of course, we are a tennis program. So we have about 200 kids in our summer camp, as I said, on a typical summer camp. About 40% of them receive free or some reduced rate at any given time. We also have typically about 250 kids that are in our junior tennis clinics throughout the week during the school year. These numbers will increase with the expansion that we're going to share with you shortly. And the tennis programs that we have, they have an impact. We have engaged about 15,000 kids in the tennis pipeline over the past 15 years or so. We provide about 900 plus hours per year of academic and athletic programming for kids, many of whom would not otherwise meet the federally recommended guidelines for physical activity. And our scholar athletes meet that and exceed that. And I gave you an example here of a Mattapan resident who started with us at 8 years old, got a full scholarship to Clark Atlanta, and is now in medical school. So it works if parents understand the value proposition of sports-based youth development, and we are here to be able to help them leverage that and get their kids the physical activity and engagement that they need. We do that with the junior tennis pipeline that is recognized by the U.S. Tennis Association, which is the national governing body of tennis in the United States. We have junior tennis clinics for kids beginning at age 5. And as I mentioned, the camps and lessons. But in addition to that, we have a very robust adult tennis program. We are a year-round tennis center. Right now, we have 7 indoor and 7 outdoor hard courts. We have about 350 adult members, and there are guests who come through regularly. We offer tennis clinics and competitive tennis leagues that allow people who perhaps played tennis in college, or perhaps like me, didn't pick up a racket until they were in their 40s, but have now found that this is a nice way to remain competitive and athletic and to stay engaged with the sport. So what we are finding right now is that we are basically out of court space. We were out of court space before the pandemic, but during the pandemic, 4 local tennis clubs went out of business. It increased the demand and sportsmen for courts at the same time that it required us to decrease the number of kids and players that we could have on the courts at one time. So prior to the pandemic, we had already launched a capital campaign to try and increase our capacity. We started that formally in January of 2018. By last January, we had started the quiet phase of this campaign. I'm sorry, can you not see that? It's hard for me to see what you can see at the same time. By January of 2021, we had started the quiet phase of this capital campaign with the goal to raise about $4 million. And by this past summer, we had secured most of that, and we're beginning to look at the full campaign and the permissions that are needed for that. So what we're doing right now is working to make sure the community is aware of this as we continue the process of getting the approval for the first phase of this. We're hoping that by the fall of 2022, we'll be able to complete the first leg of this, which is adding 1 prefabricated metal building onto some of the outdoor courts that we currently have. And then over the next couple of years, as this is done, there are additional plans that we can get into at a later time, but basically those plans would increase our capacity for all of the soft programs that we've talked to you about, where this expansion is focused on the tennis. So I am going to turn this over now to our architect, and I will move the screens at his direction, but this gives you a nice aerial of the Sportsman's facility on Blue Hill Avenue. And Peter, I will turn this over to you.
Thanks, Tony. And thanks everybody for participating tonight. Tony, if you could scroll up a little bit. This is just an aerial of the existing campus. We're within Harambee Park. As Tony said, we currently have 2 court buildings, a 3-court building and a 4-court building. So we have 7 enclosed courts and 7 outdoor courts. If you could scroll down. The project that we're here to present tonight is about enclosing 4 of those outdoor courts so that we would move from having 7 year-round tennis courts to 11 year-round tennis courts. This will really expand the ability of the club to work throughout the wintertime and really expand our ability to serve youth and adults. If you keep scrolling, since we're also doing major improvements on the east side of the campus, we are going to take the opportunity to add lighting to the existing 3 outdoor courts that would remain outdoors, so that we'll have extended use of those courts. There being so much demand. The next image really shows you sort of from an aerial 3-dimensional perspective, what the campus looks like now. We're kind of hovering over Blue Hill Avenue, looking down from the northwest. And when we complete the new metal building, which will pretty much look very much like our existing buildings, what the campus will look like when we've completed this expansion project to enclose those 4 courts. I'm happy to take any questions, but I think we're pretty tight on time, so we might want to roll on to discuss the opportunity of solar energy.
I think actually, since we have moved very quickly, Fatima, if it's okay, I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions before we go to the solar conversation. So do you call folks, or should I ask people who have questions?
We have one question from David Holness.
Good evening, and thank you very much for this presentation. It looks very attractive. Two quick questions. The first of which is, I always tell my friends and family, look, we're in this pandemic for a while. It's not just going to disappear just because we have vaccinations and stuff, but so we're going to be in this for a few more years. The first question is, how I don't understand how it's possible to use to play tennis in those buildings during a pandemic, especially when you're supposed to be wearing a mask. Maybe there's something I don't know about, or maybe the ventilation is such so that it's a negative pressure zone so that the air gets sucked out of the establishments. The second question is, tennis, this is a great facility, and even when I'm looking at it now with the improvements you're planning, it seems like even more space is needed. Is it possible that you could expand downwards into the park, like towards the Joseph Lee School, or is that green space not possible to expand into?
David, thank you. Those are two great questions. So I'll take the first one and say that Sportsman's has been not only respectful of, but ahead of the game in terms of maintaining our safety with regard to the pandemic. We have right now a vaccine mandate. We have actually, in conjunction with Brigham and Women's, with our Center for Community Wellness, we actually have been running vaccine clinics at Sportsman's. When this first began, we were running testing clinics at Sportsman's as well. So we've taken this very seriously. We've invested at times in various strategies to make sure that we do mitigate anything we can as far as the air quality itself. There is a mask mandate in the city of Boston. So we have a mask mandate even on the court, even when you're playing tennis. And I will say that we've had an extraordinarily good record in terms of not having transmissions, not having any spread within the club. We have a nurse on our staff who is the director of our health programs. She stays on top of everything. She makes sure that if anyone has a positive test in their family or in their household, that we know exactly what needs to happen. We've had an affidavit that people have to sign every time they step foot in the building, confirming that confirming that they have had no symptoms since they have last been in the building, et cetera. So we've taken every step that we possibly can. David, I see you and I'm happy to call on you next. So I hope that answers the question. As I say, we've had very little transmission, very few cases within the facility, and to the best of our knowledge, no transmission. There have been no cases, no outbreaks or anything to that effect. We had a vaccine mandate in place long before anyone else was even thinking about it. As soon as it became available for kids, it was mandated that they get it as well. And as I said, we've had a vaccine clinic happening at Sportsman's once a week since July. With regard to us expanding, we use the space that we have. We have the use of it right now by legislation that was passed in the late 60s. And as much as I would love for us to expand, I think the odds of us getting additional legislation or being able to expand beyond our current boundaries would be very slim. It would be my answer to that question. I hope that answers you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Can
David? Oh, sorry.
Is it possible to hold the questions until after they finish
Sure.
going through? Just because.
Okay, absolutely. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
I thought we were on good time. So Isaac, and then I will turn it over to you. Unfortunately, I can't see what all of you can see, so I hope this is a sufficient image for you.
I think that this should be good. So good evening, everyone. My name is Isaac. I'm the co-CEO at Resonant Energy, your local solar developer based in Dorchester, helping to bring solar to nonprofits and limited resource communities across Massachusetts. And I've done a lot of work with faith-based communities and many other nonprofits in the Dorchester area. This project tonight is just showing, as you can see, there are panels arranged in two sections on the south-facing side of the new building that's being contemplated here, which will be a standing seam metal roof, and the panels will basically clip into rails that will be installed along that roof to capture all the great sunlight throughout the year that is hitting the south side of that roof. The system is 189 kilowatts, and it is producing 233,000 kilowatt hours per year. Just for quick math, that is approximately enough power for about 38 households. Average household in Massachusetts uses about 6,000 kilowatt hours per year. So that's a nice sizable commercial sized array that's going to create a lot of great environmental benefits. And it will tie into electrically through an underground channel that is outlined there as well. So that's sort of the technical pieces. We can move to the next slide to talk about the community benefits associated with this. So it's just highlighting some of the parties involved. So we're the project developer working closely with Tony to bring this project to life. The financing partner is called Sunwealth, based in Cambridge. And the goal of this project is it's going to be third-party financed, where community impact investors are going to help make this roughly $500,000. Actually, it's about $500,000 or $600,000 installation happen at no upfront cost to sportsmen. And it's going to provide annual financial benefit to sportsmen by helping them reduce their on-site electricity costs, where it's going to cover about half the power is going to go to sportsmen, and it's going to offset about 90% of the on-site usage. And then the remaining 50% will be sold at over a 20% discount to low-income ratepayers in the greater Boston area. So this is what's called low-income community solar, where households who are on the low-income R2 rate in Eversource would be eligible to participate. And what this means is there's no risk involved. You sign up and you get basically a 20% discount. So every month, if $100 worth of bill credit shows up on your electric bill, you pay back $80 in exchange for receiving that benefit, and you've netted $20. So that's how community solar works experientially for the community. And then as far as the overall benefits, this is going to be the equivalent of taking 846 cars off the road, preserving 4,700 acres of forest, and helping 18 to 25 tenants or low-income residents in the community generate over $100,000 in bill savings, in addition to the direct benefit that sportsmen will get from hosting this solar array. So happy to answer more questions, but hope that was a nice quick summary as the cherry on top of a great project here.
So I suspect that kind of felt like drinking from a fire hose. I'm going to put my email address in the chat, and hopefully we answered a lot of your questions. We'll take questions certainly now, and I can scroll back up if there are specific images that you need to see. And hopefully we'll get all of your questions answered in support of this project. So Fatima, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. David, if you want to start, since you didn't get to start last time.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. My question, or maybe is a statement that I'd like you to respond to, is that my emphasis has always been, whenever we're building something new, that the local community benefits from it in the sense of helping to create wealth that goes around. So I'm hoping that there is opportunities here for minority general contractors and minority subcontractors in building this beautiful building that would do so many good things for young people and older people in the community.
Mm-hmm. Peter, do you want to take a stab at that, or do you want me to?
You can respond.
So we put the program out to competitive bid actually almost 2 years ago now, because it's taken us a little while to get to this point. And we did specify in the bid process that we wanted to see both local and minority contractors, subcontractors, and laborers. Each of the bidders committed to that, and we ended up signing with Shawmut Construction. We have not gotten to the point of seeing who their subs are going to be, but again, we have indicated that as a commitment. Certainly it is a commitment for us as well. It's a priority for us as well. So when we get to the construction point, we will be working with them to see what we're able to do to make sure that that is a priority as well.
And I can share, this is Isaac, just briefly for the solar piece. Resonant participates in a number of groups. One nonprofit group is called Browning the Green Space, which is trying to bring together more contractors on the clean energy piece of this project specifically. And we are working actively with many organizations, including Emerald Cities and a number of folks who are trying to help build more of a pipeline of contractors specifically for clean energy portions of construction, where there is significantly lower representation than some of the other trades even. And so we're actively working on that. There are right now 2 minority-owned electrical contractors with any experience with solar in Greater Boston, and we are very actively seeking more leads on that front. So if anyone has any ideas, we would welcome that. The contractor selection for the solar piece has not yet happened, so that there's still many months of time on that front.
Okay.
Hi, good evening. Just to piggyback on what Mr. Lopes said, in terms of it being an economic agent for our community, you know, I would also want to see that when it comes to like the operating, property management, cleaning, landscaping, or is that already part of the plans?
I can assure you that we are an extraordinarily diverse organization. You can feel free to stop by Sportsman's and meet the team, meet the contractors. Trust me, and if you like, again, I'll put my email in there. I'm happy to share with you. The companies that we use are all local companies. We understand.
Okay, we have, because of in time, each person question, you have 20 seconds to ask the question, and I'll give 35 seconds to answer it. First order, Barbara Crusoe. Time, Pam, start the clock.
I don't have a question. I just have a statement. My niece, Maya Hall-Smith, was in your education program back in 2007. She went on to George Washington University, and she is now working at Brown University. So your program, and she was there over a summer program when she was in high school. And I approved that program. It's fantastic, and more kids should be able to take advantage of what she got.
Thank you, Barbara.
And that's a wrap. Thank you, Barbara. That's exactly what we're trying to say here.
Well, according to my timekeeper, Pam, I guess this is a wrap. She's texting me, telling me when time is. So going forward, what we, is there a way that we can get some more information about when you get further down the process about who's been chosen as the contractors and subcontractors?
So certainly I've put my email address in the chat box. I've also put our website there. Please feel free to reach out to me. We'd be happy to share more information as we move forward. And again, right now, what we're waiting for is the final approval. There's a requirement that National Park Service has to sign off on this because we sit on Boston Parks and Recreation land. And hopefully we'll get that permission soon, be able to move forward and keep all of you informed.
Great. And the one other thing, when you, I think it was the other gentleman, it said that the energy goes to the greater Boston area. He didn't mean that, right, Tony? We're talking about the benefits would be going to those who are immediately surrounding the Sportsman's Club, correct?
Isaac, are you still there? Do you want to speak to that?
Yes, so I can clarify. So the literal electrons that are produced feed into the grid and get used locally. The way community solar works as a benefit is when it feeds into the grid, it generates what's called a bill credit that can be transferred to anyone who pays an Eversource bill in the greater Boston area. So the 20 to 25 residents that will sign up to participate in community solar, we will strive to have them be directly in Boston. But technically, from just the rules of the program with the utility standpoint, they can be anywhere in Eversource territory, and they will get a financial benefit. They will not literally be receiving the power at their home, but they will get an accounting benefit in the form of reduced electricity bill for participating.
So Isaac, can you talk to what happened at Codman at the church? Where do those go?
Codman is installation we did at Second Church in Dorchester is a simpler system, which is only offsetting the power that is used by the church. So it's offsetting about 80% of all the energy needs of the church itself. This project, the roof was so large that it could produce twice as much power as the site needed. And so we're actually exporting about half of it to go to directly offset the bills of households because of that.
But half
So
of it
Isaac,
will go
do
to Sportsman's itself, correct?
That's right.
So Isaac, is there an opportunity for us to encourage the local residents to participate in the program? Is there any option like that that we can do that would increase the likelihood that some of the overage, some of that surplus energy would benefit the Blue Hill corridor and more specifically in the local community?
Absolutely. Once we get to that point in the sign up process, we are going to make that information available to you, Tony, and we can figure out how to publicize it. But we will want to, we have to identify, around 20 households. And so we would love as much help as the community wants to provide in finding 20 eligible low-income residents.
That Isaac, is very, very easy to do. I don't think you'll have a problem with that. And with that, we'll be working with our local electeds to work on that and to make sure that the benefit is local. Because when someone comes to our community and you're asking us to participate, again, just like any other development, community benefits is local to the community, not Milton, not Randolph. I love those other towns and visit them, but community benefits is a community to which you're in.
I think in that place, Fatima, with Franklin Hill and Franklin Field sitting right there, it
Right.
should not be very hard.
Exactly. It's Franklin Field, exactly. It's a stone's throw, if that. So, but thank you very, very much for a great presentation.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
All right. Hopefully you stay on. Next up, we have Mr. Scott Hamway. Scott, oh, there you are.
Hi, here I am. Can you see me, Fatima? Thank you.
And, you're welcome. And as I said, Barbara Critchlow was in the audience. Barbara, Scott wanted to make sure that you were on.
That's why I'm here.
Scott knows better. He knows if he's there, I'm there.
Okay. Well, with that, I'm going to let Scott begin talking about the electrification of the 28 bus.
Great, thanks, Fatima, and thanks everybody for making some time for us on the agenda tonight. It's been a great meeting so far. Hopefully we can keep with that trend. And I just want to mention I'm also joined by Alexandra Markevich, who works with me on the program as well. She's the manager of the bus facility modernization program. So we're working on this together. I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Is that showing up?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, let me just try to get it on a slideshow here. Let's see. All right, there we go. So yeah, we're here tonight to talk about our new bus maintenance facility that we're building over in Jamaica Plain on the Arbor Way by Forest Hills Station. And the question is probably like, you're in the wrong meeting. Like, why do we care about that? And the reason is because a lot of the bus service that serves Mattapan actually comes out of that garage, and the project that we're advancing in Arbor Way is going to do a lot of things, but one of them, importantly, is to electrify all the buses that come out of that bus facility. This is part of a much larger effort here at the T, where we're aiming to electrify all 1,150 of our buses by 2040. That's we're really proud and excited about that timeline. It's certainly aggressive when you look at what's happening around the country, but we feel like it's achievable. And the vehicle type that we're using to get there is battery electric buses, which is the predominant way that our peers around North America are electrifying their bus fleets. These should be great for the community because they don't have any tailpipe emissions, which means they're going to be much cleaner in Mattapan than compressed natural gas buses or diesel buses. Due to a contract that the MBTA signed with its electrical providers, 100% of MBTA electricity is going to be coming from renewable sources. So in addition to the vehicles being cleaner as they go down the street, the electricity they're sourced with is also going to be cleaner. They're going to be a lot quieter going down the street. I live next to a bus stop and know that the diesel buses can be can be loud as they're climbing the hill or coming to a stop. These buses will be a lot quieter. And while the current state of battery technology is kind of leading the T to including secondary heating systems on the buses for really cold winter days, those will be powered with diesel. That's kind of a stopgap measure we need to use in order to have the confidence to electrify now rather than wait another 5 or 10 years. Even with those, emissions are going to be reduced by more than 90% by these buses. And we're confident that as battery technology advances over the next 5-10 years, we'll be able to gradually phase out those secondary heaters. This is just sort of a chart here on the left that kind of shows you that timeline that we're pursuing. Basically, the way to read it is, in order to electrify our fleet, we need to, today buses come back to the garage, they get fueled up with diesel fuel or compressed natural gas. We need to modernize all of our facilities so when buses come home at the end of the night, they can charge up and recharge that battery to make service the next day. So the blue area in this chart is really showing the capacity that we're going to have to house battery electric buses with each facility that we open. So each step on this chart is sort of a new bus facility opening, which then increases the capacity we have for battery buses. And the green line shows you how over time we fill those facilities up with battery buses. And here's where Arbor Way is in the timeline. So it's, it's an important goal to electrify the fleet, but it's not our only goal. We know that bus riders are our most loyal and dependable customers. Bus ridership has really, buses have really retained their ridership at the T to a much greater degree than subway or commuter rail have. So we know these are riders that are really relying on us, for their mobility needs. So while we want to electrify, and that's very important, we also need to make sure that we're keeping our bus service reliable for our customers who are depending on us. That means these new facilities we're building have a dual purpose, right? They also allow us to give our workforce, our maintenance workforce, the kind of conditions they need to most effectively maintain these vehicles and keep them out on the street. And while this green line shows on the chart shows that how we're going to be purchasing electric buses over the next 18 years, there will still be some purchases of diesel hybrid buses in the early years, in cases where we don't have the facility capacity for electric, because we want to keep buying buses every year, like a trip to the supermarket, so that we don't run into a situation where we end up with a fleet where the average bus is 12, 13, 14 years old, which is where we were about 7 or 8 years ago. We've brought the average age down to 7 years, and that really helps with our reliability. And although, we're in a different place than we were when we started this program, we are optimistic that transit's going to come back and come all the way back. And certainly before COVID, we were running into a lot of situations where we couldn't meet the demand for bus service during peak periods because we had no capacity to store additional buses. So each facility we're building it a little bit bigger. This image here on the bottom right is the Quincy facility, which is going to start construction in a few months. That's our first one. The reason we started there is we weren't able to fit any modern buses in that more than a century old facility. So in order to keep bus service running in Quincy, we had to start there. But going forward, as we kind of laid out to our board about 9 months ago, we really want to make our decisions based on these factors and equity, the condition of the facilities, and then our fleet plan. So certainly when you look at the sort of easiest path to us making a change that can really deliver electric and reliable bus service to meet our equity goals, Arbor Way is really the best place to do that. A lot of the routes coming out of Arbor Way serve high proportions of low income and households of color. So this was a logical place for us to start from an equity perspective. From a condition perspective, the facility that's there, that was, many of you may remember it kind of going up about 20 years ago, that facility was intended to be temporary, and it's largely outdoor and kind of inadequate. And then finally, the fleet that we run out of there is a compressed natural gas fleet that's set to be retired at the end of this decade. So we want to get a new facility built so we can buy battery electric buses when we replace this existing fleet. And that all kind of leads up to what I think is probably of most interest to the folks here tonight, which is the kind of benefits for Mattapan. So as part of this project, we will be building a bigger facility. As I said, we're going to go from 118 buses to 200 buses. And that's going to allow us to electrify all the routes that come out of there today. And you see listed here the 7 Mattapan routes that come out of Arbor Way Garage today. We're going to be able to electrify all of those, but it's also going to allow us to move in a number of other routes from Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan that we can slide over into Arbor Way and thereby electrify those routes faster. One example, another kind of key feature of this garage is the longer 60-foot buses that you see on Blue Hill Avenue on the 28. Those right now are only coming out of one garage in Roxbury. With this garage, this is going to be our first one where we can have your 40-foot buses that you see on like the 31, as well as the larger 60-foot buses coming out of the same garage. So when we do that, there's a couple of cool things that will allow us to do. One of them is we can upgrade a route like the 32, which runs along Hyde Park Avenue, and we can upgrade that very crowded route from a 40-foot bus to a 60-foot bus. But we can also move over the 28 on Blue Hill Avenue and the 39 on Center Street. Those are two 60-footer routes today that have come out of our Southampton Street garage. We'd be able to move both of those into Arbor Way and run them with electric buses after this project's done. And then the takeaway at the bottom there is, when this project is done, and Alexandra's just going to spend a couple slides talking about the project and the timeline. When that's done, 40% of the buses that provide local bus service in the city of Austin for the MBTA would be electric upon the completion and filling of this garage, including all bus service in Mattapan. All of the routes that serve Mattapan, at least as I understand the geography, would be electric with the completion of this project. So I'm going to, and this map, I'm sorry, I didn't explain, but this map in green, all the green routes are the ones that currently come out of Arbor Way today. The powder blue and dark blue routes currently come out of other garages, but would be routes that we would move into Arbor Way once that facility is completed. So just to flag a couple more, I didn't mention the 16 on Columbia Road or the 22 on Talbot Ave would be a couple other routes that we would be able to move over into the larger Arbor Way facility. So I'm going to hand it off to Alexandra and we'll continue to share my screen.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So Scott, definitely went over, I think, kind of one of the most exciting benefits of the project, but I'll talk a little bit about the bus facility itself and what our plans are so far. We're just at the very beginning of design. So we have an initial concept, but over the next couple of years, we'll really flesh that out into a full-fledged design. Right now, I'm not sure if folks are familiar with the existing bus facility, but it sits along Washington Street, kind of from where you see that Lotus Street extension, or actually from Brookley Road all the way down to Arbor Way. So we have kind of the maintenance facility up by Brookley Road, and then a lot of the storage happens outside along Washington Street towards Arbor Way. That's right across kind of northeast of Forest Hills. Kind of Forest Hills is right southeast of there. And so when we took a look at the site, we actually own the parcel where you see the proposed new facility, which is where we have at former MBTA headquarters, and it sits on a pretty large parcel. And due to a number of agreements with the community that occurred when we built this existing facility, which was intended as a temporary facility back in 2004, as well as just the logistics of building a new facility while maintaining operations on the existing facility. It made sense to site our facility on the Arbor Way side of our site, so where the existing kind of 500 Arbor Way building is. And since we knew we wanted to house 200 buses there, we actually decided to make the facility multiple levels. So there'll be buses that can ramp up to a second level for storage in order to make sure that our facility could fit on a small enough footprint to maintain our operations throughout the construction. And then we're really excited, open up all of that space for future development by the city of Boston and the community. We know that area has been cited for housing and affordable housing, cited in Plan JP Rocks and other planning documents. So we're excited to see kind of what happens with that 8 acres down the road. And then another feature of this facility, I forget if we mentioned it, is that the plans for it is that just like Quincy, which you can see in that image, it would be all indoors. So unlike our existing facility where the buses are stored outside and there's a couple of different maintenance buildings, it would be a fully enclosed indoor facility that would have, a fairly large footprint, but means that all of that kind of maintenance work and et cetera is going to be done inside. Next slide. And so just a little bit about the strategy we're using for electrification. It's not going to be like the kind of electric cars you've seen around where people are like plugging them in. Instead, what we're going to rely on is overhead charging so that the buses can come in and park. And instead of having kind of cords and wires kind of all over the place, we're going to have the charging come down from suspended. It's going to be suspended from the ceiling and come down and charge the roof of the bus. And we're working through how that will work in terms of transitioning the way we do operations today, where we fuel the buses and then we park them overnight, and then any bus can get taken out on any route. We're working with all the different relevant departments of the T with how that would work in terms of making sure that we're charging buses in a way that helps us ensure reliability and operate service in the morning and throughout the day. And then I think, Scott mentioned the diesel heaters. Sorry, just quickly, Scott mentioned the diesel heaters that would support us on those very cold days when we don't want to drain all the battery heating the bus. But we're also looking longer term into identifying a couple places within the city to have en route charging where buses kind of make frequent stops that will help us eliminate the need for those diesel heaters eventually and help ensure that we can run service all day on some of the buses that are kind of running more frequently. And so a little bit about our schedule, as I mentioned earlier, it is going to be a long design process because it is a large and complex facility. So we're starting now and we expect to be in the design phase for the next couple years and then aim to start construction sometime in 2024 and open by the end of 2027 to line us up for the retirement of the existing buses that Scott mentioned in 2028, 2029 timeframe to have this facility open and running before that would have to happen. So that's all right now.
So happy to take any questions, Fatima, from the group. I see a couple of folks have their hands up.
Sure. David Holmes first, and then Owen to Michelle. David?
Good evening. I look forward to this project getting underway and completed. Two quick questions. One, I know that the T has like a 4-hour shutdown between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. So I'm wondering on those really, really cold nights, like what we've just gone through or still going through, will 4 hours be enough time to charge up the buses? And the second part was, rather than diesel heaters, has the T looked into things like maybe using hydrogen? I know that there are hydrogen powered cars out there now and the byproduct is just water and CO2. So I'm just wondering.
Yeah, no, great questions, David. Yeah, so our service is largely shut between 1 and 5. We do have some services that do run a little bit later than that and start a little bit earlier than that. And our route network is and our service is evolving, but for the most part, there is a significant drop off in sort of how many buses we have out on the street as you get after the evening rush hour. You get to 7, 8, 9 o'clock. So you have a pretty good sized portion of the fleet is back at the facility much earlier in the evening than 1 in the morning, and our models indicate that we've got time to kind of charge them up. One of the benefits of an indoor facility like this as well is that the buses aren't sitting out in the cold. It's a little bit easier to get them, charged up more quickly. So we believe that the combination of indoor storage, the ability for every bus to have a parking spot and a charger in the garage, the sort of complementary heating systems to get through the coldest days until, you know, the battery technology evolves, hopefully, you know, within 5-10 years to allow us to eliminate that feature entirely. And then as Alexandra noted, looking for opportunities at places like Mattapan Station or Forest Hill Station or, you know, Ashmont Station, where we could install in what's called en route chargers to sort of top buses off while they're having like a layover during the day. We feel like we can meet it with this technology. We have, our vehicle team has looked at hydrogen as a possible solution. It's just the sort of right now it's sort of not ready for the scale of operation that we've got here. And I think that's in line with what you see in all of our peers kind of nationally in North America.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Alanza?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good to see you, Scott. It's been a while.
Yeah, good to see you, Alanza.
So I have two distinct questions. My first question is, are the buses dual conversion buses like the Silver Line, you know, where you can alternate between fuel and electric? And if not, are there any plans for that? Because I asked just so that these hybrid models may be more effective for long distance multiple trips in the event of any mechanical or engineering issues that arise at the charging stations. And then my second question is about, it is in regards to hiring. Given the shortage of workers in this specific specialization, has the MBTA, has there been any discussion at the policy level or in the workforce development office at all that's focused on local hiring and training so that workers are able to be brought on locally to support the maintenance staff?
Thanks, Alanza. Good questions. Let me know if I don't answer them all, but I'll try. Yeah, so the buses that you're referencing on the Silver Line that switch between a diesel engine and electric power, these buses will be purely electric from the standpoint of how their kind of motors running and how they're getting up and down the street. The only non kind of electrical element of it would be the complementary heating systems, which wouldn't be used every time we put the heat on, right? I think if you have days like today or the rest of this week looks like, you know, we're pretty confident that we can run most of our service, maybe with a couple tweaks to how long a bus is out on the street. But you know, we have some times where the bus is out on the street really for the whole day without coming back. We're confident that we can deliver that service with the battery and using the battery for heat. It's really just on those coldest days that we think the heater is what we need to give us confidence to electrify as aggressively as we are. In terms of like, I think redundancy is what you're talking about. I think that's definitely, you know, an issue that's something that we're, you know, looking at, and our facilities do include kind of backup power generation. Now it's not, you know, easy to back up the scale of power that we're bringing these facilities for our charging capacity. So we will have to get creative if there's like a regional blackout or a localized blackout the last few days. We'll need to get creative. But since we're electrifying the whole network system wide with each one of these new facilities that opens up, that gives us some redundancy where we have another place we can go and charge these facilities, that charge our buses. This facility will open after Quincy, and Quincy will have some extra capacity down there if we needed to back up this fleet. And then, you know, with hiring, all I can say, Alanza, if you've been out in the system lately, there's a really aggressive and sustained push that the T is making to try to get staffing back up, because we have lost a lot of our operations staff. So that all I can say is that's definitely, you know, one of the top focuses of the organization right now, and they're getting the word out, you know, where local people would see it, you know, at our bus terminals, at our subway stations. So hopefully those answered your questions, Alanza.
Thanks, Scott. Just as a follow-up for the second question about hiring, I'm specifically curious about training programs for local residents in mechanics and engineering to accommodate the new technology. It seems like there's an opportunity to address any talent pipeline challenges by developing programming around that. So I'm just curious if you knew anything about that.
Yeah, no, I think that that's a really good point. I think, you know, right now, I think what we're focused on, and we're just kind of getting started on this because we feel like we've got Quincy in a good place, and we're moving forward with the Arbor Way design, is we're starting to sort of put together like an internal working group. We're really trying to get the organization, everybody we need to the table so that we can make this transition as smooth as possible at the end of the day for our customers, because they're the ones that are kind of relying on this. So I think we're really focused right now on sort of like training for our existing mechanics and machinists so that they're ready for this transition. But I think it's a good point, and I think that you know, where, you know, if there are opportunities or that you want to suggest, or that you want to reach out to us about, whether it's with, you know, if it's at Madison Park, if it's at Wentworth, you know, if it's in the schools, if there's ideas that you have, we're interested in learning more about them and going out and speaking with folks.
Great, I do have ideas. I'll be in touch. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Alonso.
Thanks, Scott. Let's see, due to the time, we're going to say thank you. So sorry, I don't see any more chat questions right now in the chat.
Ashley, can I have one statement here?
Because it is used, State Rep Holmes, absolutely.
So I'm just gonna be as brief as I can, and this is me trying my best to get Scott and Alexandra here early because of the fact that, again, what happened with Casey Overpass with the bridge near Forest Hills. One of the things when I tried to go add people to the local, you know, to that local organized, you know, group, it was like everyone felt like they were coming on late to have a conversation. Like Barbara literally said to me, "Hey, Russell, you guys decided," you know, because she wanted the bridge. She's like, "You guys are building a cake, and I was going to make it. And I thought it should be a pie," whatever that analogy was. My point of having Scott and them come here now is this is something that impacts us, as you see every bus route in Mattapan. Let's make sure that as those groups are being organized, Scott obviously is going to be intentional about it as well, but let's make sure that we understand that is a project that just because we hear is you know, Arbor Way Yards is not us. It is us. I just want to make sure that we get into this early. And Scott, of course, as usual, just make sure you keep us as you're organizing whatever input groups, community groups, CHEs, whatever you want to call them, make sure that it really reflects, you know, our side of the community as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, for Holmes. Scott, I didn't know if you have any.
No, I was just going to say I was disappointed Barbara didn't have a question, but it looks like she has her hand up now. I don't know if that's from before or not.
No, I'm sure she has some parting wisdom. Barbara, I give you 20 seconds.
All right, I keep getting the 20 seconds. Come on, Patina.
No, it's 20.
Anyway,
it's 20.
Scott, you did a complete presentation like as you usually do. And I want to fall back on what Russell just said. Yeah, we do need to be a part of this. And it was apple pies and blueberry pies, Russ.
I can remember what your analogy was. I got you.
But yes, anytime that this project comes into our area, we definitely need to be a part of it. It just seems like the MBTA projects really affect Mattapan on a serious note. And then again, people say, I didn't know anything about it. Please keep us in touch. And Scott, I know you'll do that. And Alexandra, we're just meeting you, but hopefully you'll become a part of this process as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Barbara.
Thank you. I just want to wrap this one up that on Wednesday, there's a reminder, thank you, Lensa, that the next transportation talk, T-Talk, is on this Wednesday, and the theme is transportation and food access. So it'll be a really great conversation. Hopefully everyone will register for that. And there's a link in the chat for that. Next, and Scott, if possible, could we get a copy of your presentation? That way we can put it up on the site.
Sure. Yes. Is just the easiest way just to email it over to you? Is
Yeah.
that Okay,
Yeah.
I'll send it out tonight to you.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Thanks everybody for the time tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Our next but not least presenter for tonight is Celia Grant. She is the Executive Director for Engagement and Programs for Daily Table. And Celia, I see you. There you are. If you'd like to start.
I would. So thank you very much, everyone. I know this is a really long evening, so I really appreciate your time. I'm going to speak very briefly. I am the Director of Engagement and Programs for Daily Table, and I am reaching out to let you guys know that Daily Table is planning on opening a new store in Mattapan. We actually have two new stores planned for this year, one in Mattapan and one in Salem, with the Mattapan store coming first. I don't know if everyone on the call knows about Daily Table, but I will share a bit of background information and encourage people to reach out to me. I'll put my email address in the chat, and would love to hear from folks if they have something they want to share with us. So Daily Table is a nonprofit community grocery store, and its dedicated mission is to try to provide a place where people can shop for food that is affordable. We offer a range of fresh produce, grocery staples, prepared foods, and most of this food is purchased through regular channels. Our business model is we're about 65% revenue from sales and 35% from charitable donations. And that's not in-kind donations, that is charitable donations in money form. We collaborate with more than 60 mission-aligned organizations. We have worked with many nonprofits in the Dorchester, even in Mattapan, even though we don't have a store there, area, to provide help with gift cards or food for events. I can't, the list just goes on and on with regards to ways in which we've tried to be connected to the communities that we are located in, and we are definitely looking for more opportunities to do that with our opening in Mattapan. I just wanted to also mention that we just got approved for SNAP Online. We are the first local retailer in the United States to be approved for allowing folks who have SNAP to be able to purchase their groceries online. I believe the other retailers that are doing it are Walmart, Amazon, I think maybe BJ's, really big players. In addition to that, all of our online orders come with free delivery within 2 miles of our stores. The store that we're opening in Mattapan will be opened in the new apartment building that's going up right at the Mattapan trolley station. I think they're building 3 or 4 commercial spaces there, and we're going to be in one of them. I believe that building is all affordable. And our timeline is July 15th, something like that, like the middle of July of 2022. Let's see. I think that that's pretty much all I really wanted to say. I just wanted to get the word out that we are planning to open a new store. I encourage folks to reach out if they have questions. I am meeting with some of the folks that are involved with some of the neighborhood associations that are under the umbrella of the Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Council. I think that that's it for now. If folks have questions, I'm happy to answer some. or maybe there's something I didn't say that you had hoped I'd say.
I think that, I don't see any questions in the chat,
Okay.
but I know that people are looking forward to speaking with you directly in the other meeting. And you said July 15th?
That's the target date where the developer of the apartment building is hoping that our store will be open when they are ready to accept residents.
Okay.
So that the store will be open at the same time
Okay.
or before their residents move in. So that's the
Okay.
goal. It's a great
Okay.
location.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being able to speak to you guys.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, the last but not least, we're going to do committee reports. Matthew.
Thanks, Fatima. The Public Services Committee will be meeting tomorrow night and welcoming the Cummins Highway team from BTD and Public Works to talk about the project. They're going to give us a little preview of the trees presentation, the street trees presentation they'll be giving later this month, and also possibly start to get into some of like the stuff about how they're proposing a roundabout and maybe some other items. I don't know exactly what will be on the agenda, but looking forward to that. And as always, if you have anything that you need that's impacting you where you live that is related to public services, whether it's like an infrastructure thing like problems with the roads or whatever, or it could be about police, fire, anything like that, I'll go ahead and drop my email in the chat, and I will be very happy to add you to our mailing list or talk about what the problems are and try to help get an answer. Thanks.
Next would be the zoning committee. We had one item last month on the zoning committee, and that had to do with, we had to make a recommendation. The St. Michael's crematorium put forward adding additional 8 new retorts. Retorts are the actual physical entity where bodies enter for lack of a better word, burning.
Cremation.
Cremation, thank you. Thank you, David, much appreciated. With that, there was a lot of community discussion and concern about the output into the air from the retorts, and those have to do with vaporized mercury in particular, because of the nearby elementary school, the Haley School, as well as nearby homes. There are only 2, I don't know if most people know this, there are only 2 cremation sites within Greater Boston that serve the Greater Boston area. And that is the Forest Hill Cemetery, which is right there along Walk Hill, as well as St. Michael's. And they serve all of the cemeteries in Boston, but also I think a total of 75, I believe they said that they service. So that is a lot. The recommendation that came out of afterwards from the members of the committee was that, one, we believe that it is a requirement that the crematorium continue to work with the community as well as the city. One, to install, we're making a recommendation to install air monitoring control systems, and that to work directly with the city. And we're going to work with St. Michael's in the city in order to make sure that those, if those going forward, depending upon what happens with ISD, that those are in place. The other thing is to, we had made a request to see to work with the cemeteries so that before the bodies reach the crematorium, you remove the metals that usually are found within dental fillings that actually have mercury still in them, to have those removed at the cemetery before they, at the funeral homes, I'm sorry, before they go to the crematorium. And that way, that concern would not be there at all, effectively mitigating the issue pretty much, since they already are removing other things like pacemakers and other metals that people have in their hips and knees. That, how many retorts there currently? There are, Matthew, currently is there 8? Is it 8 currently?
I don't remember.
I think it's 8, and they wanted to go up to 16, right?
Team, I believe it's 4 right now, and they want to move to make 8 with the possibility of having 4 more, 12.
Right, that's true. Okay, that is
sounds
true.
right.
That is true. So who do I have? Let's see. I have Dave Halbert. Is that correct?
Yes.
Pam, you there?
I'm here.
Matthew. Is Janae still here? Janae Trent? Leslie? Chad?
Fatima, I see Dante's got his hand raised.
Oh, yes, Dante.
Were you about to vote? I just wanted to say something really quickly. It's probably pertinent.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. If you were calling me, I was in the, I'm.
You were saying?
Oh, I thought I froze. Sorry.
No, you didn't.
So I was gonna say, so they it was originally 500 Canterbury Street. It was switched to 510 Canterbury Street with the same project. They've actually been scheduled for the ZBA for March 8th. March 8th, 10:30.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
Thank you. Good to know. So with that, we are definitively making the recommendation to take a vote tonight that they must install air monitoring control systems, and that they must go and have a concerted effort to reach out to the funeral home services to actually do the work before the bodies go to the crematoriums. So if I can get a vote, Matthew?
So I guess you're
support or oppose.
Yeah.
That's it, my friend.
You got it. I like your style. Yeah,
I know you do.
I
am
in favor of recommending those or making those recommendations that you just suggested. Yeah.
Okay.
In favor.
Thank you. Okay. Chad? Chad Fletcher, can you unmute? Ready?
Pam's in favor. Pam's in favor. You can take my vote, Fatima.
Okay. Thank you. Dave Halbert?
Yeah, aye.
Okay. And is Wes? Wes?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. You support or oppose? The recommendation. Okay.
Support.
Okay. And Chad, do you support the recommendation or oppose? You have to unmute. You must not be able to unmute. Chad, can you write your, you put, you can't unmute. Chad, if you could please write your support or opposition in the chat, much appreciated. Since you're not unmuting.
Hello?
Hi, Chad, can you please, I was asking for your support.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Huh?
Not sure what's going on there, but okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, I heard you, thank you. Thank you. So the supports have it. That was passed, and Dante will write our recommendations. I'll forward to you and to the community members.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any other, for housing and development, we had one development come before us. It had to do at Wales and Browning Street. And that had to do a proposal for 41 units that are condominiums. They asked us, they're not going to the ZBA. Yes, it was strictly looking at their current design. We asked that they go back and seriously consider looking at a smaller proposal, but also to include real sustainability as well as more affordability in a project that otherwise would not meet the current needs of our constituents. The last one, which we have the executive committee, and that has to do with, we're going to have an upcoming meeting to which all residents will be invited to come and speak to those who wish to be nominated to come onto the board. And we'll be taking open voting at that meeting, considering that the pandemic is still ongoing. And last but not least, I don't know how many people were on the site, tonight here. If anyone here remembers our 2019 Mattapan Love events, in conjunction with the MFFC, we are planning on holding another Mattapan Love, but we're going to call it the Greater Mattapan Love event, much bigger, we think. We are looking at getting additional funding. We're working, as I said, we'll be working in conjunction with and Powerful Pathways. Yes, thank you, Alyssa, to really put on a great event, considering all that we have gone through this last 2 years. So I look forward to speaking to more people and getting out some more information as that progresses. Thank you guys for those who have presented tonight, much appreciated. And also thank you all for hanging in there and staying on. We will get back more to a tighter schedule, so we are not hanging around another half hour. But I appreciate everyone's participation and thoughts. Thank you much. And as we say, I love you all, but you gotta go.
Have a good night.
All right, good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, Miss Burns.
Yes, I finally got on. Thank you.
Lovely that you got on.
One of the things in talking with Javier about what they're doing, watching this growing last week, he's very smart, is Javier. And
I'm gonna jump off, and if anybody needs me, you know how to reach me. Thank you, sportsmen. Take care. Good night, guys.
Kick me out, Fatima. This is Dante. Always have trouble leaving. I don't
Yeah,
understand.
you know how to reach me, Dante.
No
You can jump off.
All right.
All right. Take care. Have a good night, everyone. Good night, Miss Jones.